team like Kyrie and KD, or the Lake Show with King James and AD. Wish I could match him up with the bad boys from the 80s, but no black and white, I need that in HD. HenDawgz.
Yo, what's good, y'all? It's your boy HenDawgz, and we back to it. You know how we do it. I'm actually excited for this video, y'all, because I feel like, this is my first Detroit Pistons video, reaction video, whatever you call it. This is my first time reacting to the Detroit Pistons, man. So I know I had to put my shirt on. Where I grew up was maybe 45 minutes from Detroit, if that. So I'm right on the border, Toledo, Ohio, around the border in Michigan. You just take 75 north up to Detroit, you'll get there in no time. So not only am I excited for this video because of that, but I'm also kind of, curious about this team, because when I react to, the Larry Bird videos, and when I react to the Michael Jordan videos, I feel like all of those videos always kind of downgrade Detroit. Not really downgrade, but it's kind of always something negative about Detroit. So with Larry Bird, it was the whole Bill Laimbeer thing, how dirty of a player Bill Laimbeer was, and Larry Bird didn't care for him at all. And then in the Michael Jordan videos, it was how Isiah Thomas walked off the court and didn't shake his hand, and he didn't make the dream team. So I feel like all this kind of negative energy is always around Detroit, but they got a Making the Case video, so they had to have been great. So let's get into this video, man. We got Making the Case 1989 Pistons. Let's get it.
What's the goal of basketball? To win, right? But not just to win individual games. The ultimate goal is to win a championship. Of course, basketball is a team sport. Championships are won by the most complete, most inspired team. Every champion deserves credit. But the question on my mind is, who's the greatest team of all time? With apologies to Bill.
Before we get into it, write in the comments right now who your best team of all time is. Is it this team? Because I want to see some Detroit guys. I want to see some Midwest, Detroit, Ohio, whatever, Michigan people. I want to see y'all in these comments. So if Detroit is your team, the greatest team you think of all time, put them in the comments. If it's the Bulls, write that. Boston, Lakers, let me know in the comments who y'all think is the greatest team of all time.
And Wilt, I have a list of 8 teams since 1970 that I want to look at as having a claim to that distinction. It is a loaded question, and one that I ultimately can't answer. Is it the teams that were front runners from beginning to end? The ones who were unbeatable at their peak? Maybe the ones who tapped into something special and overcame countless obstacles? There is no right answer. It's your job to make your own call, and it's my job to make the case. So today, I'll be making the case for the 1989 Detroit Pistons as the greatest basketball team of all time.
Bad boys, stand up. Bad boys.
You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
The Bad Boys. Perhaps the most notorious collection of bruisers and tough guys ever to play basketball. If you lived through it and you weren't from Detroit, odds are you hated the Pistons. Not just because they defined what a physical brand of defense looked like, but because they also kicked your team's ass at one point or another. They finished the regular season with a 63-19 record,
63-19?
lost only 2 playoff games, and boasted one of the vaunted defenses in basketball history. They ran 9 or 10 men deep, led by Isiah Thomas and Joe Dumars in the backcourt, Bill Laimbeer in the middle, Dennis Rodman, Adrian Dantley, and later Mark Aguirre as the forwards, Rick Mahorn at the 4 spot.
All right, so looking at this roster, I definitely see 3 guys on there just from being a casual. I don't even say I'm a casual, just from being a young guy that wasn't even born yet when they were playing. I see 3 guys on here that I feel like could get that, bad boy / dirty, terminology to him. I see Isiah Thomas, I see Bill Laimbeer, and I see Dennis Rodman. Were they like the top 3 players that, gave them that bad boy's name, or some of these other players was just as bad as them? Like, was Joe Dumars, Rick Mahorn, all these other players, were they just as tough, just as, I don't want to keep saying dirty because, Bill Laimbeer, they say by far was dirty. But other than him, I don't want to just give people that dirty, that, I don't want to call them dirty. So is the rest of these players, just as tough, just as, had that hard-nosed bad boy, mentality? Was it all of them? Let me know.
And Vinnie Johnson, John Sally, and James Edwards coming in as reserves. Let's go ahead and get one thing straight. The Pistons are villains. What else would you call a team that threw more elbows, dealt more hip checks, and delivered more hard fouls than anyone? Watch any basketball documentary. Listen to any old interview. It's impossible to arrive at a different conclusion.
Oh my God.
Everyone hated them. Pippen, Jordan, Bird, McHale, Parrish, Worthy, reporters, announcers, commentators, executives, and fans alike pined for the heads of the Pistons.
So, 1989, was this the year where the coach created the Jordan rules? Was this the year where they was like, we gonna hit Jordan? I'm sure they're gonna talk about it in this video, but I want y'all to answer it right now. And by the way, too, commenters, I love the way y'all comment. So like, if you got an idea, if something is going on in your head, go ahead and write it. Go ahead and type it and press that comment button. Like, don't feel like you have to wait to the end of the video to do one long comment. Like, you can make 10, 15 comments on the same video for all I care. Like, I actually like that better, than instead of trying to read, a super, super long paragraph or, a whole bunch of different points throughout the whole video, because it's kind of hard to read it. But, if you just be like, answer this question right here, all right, post. I asked another question, you answer it again, post it. Like, you can have 5, like I said, you can have 15, 20 posts on the same video. Like, I wouldn't mind that at all.
They were the villains. You might point out the fact that Bill Laimbeer goes down as perhaps the most hated athlete who never did anything illegal. He bumped, shoved, pushed, and jawed against everyone, with special treatment saved for the league's most popular stars. Concerns were raised that his style of play wasn't just physical, it bordered on the intent to injure other players. You might remember the comments made by Rodman and co-signed by Isiah after the 1987 Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics, in which the two asserted that if Larry Bird were black, he'd be just another good player.
What?
I agree with Rodman. If he was black, he'd be just another good guy.
No. Okay. I see why people hated the Pistons. Because I've been watching Larry Bird really in depth for the last month probably. And that's the dumbest thing I done heard about Larry Bird. And Isiah was playing against him, so I don't understand why he would say that. Maybe it's his competitive edge or something. But there is no way that Larry Bird is just some average player and the only reason why he gets praised because he's white. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. There was plenty of white players in the NBA. So don't you think if that was the case, then a lot of them would be getting the praise that Larry Bird was getting? But let me know what y'all think about that.
And in the fact that Isiah had the taste of sour grapes because of his infamous stolen inbounds pass in Game 5, and the Pistons looked downright petulant.
That's why he hated
Toss in the walkout after the 91 Eastern Conference Finals, and a general air of intimidation and lack of sportsmanship from nearly the entire roster, and you could say that the reputation of the bad boy Detroit Pistons preceded them. That they were and have always been the villains. And you would be right. And that, my dear viewer, is exactly what the Pistons wanted. It's what makes them great villains, and what makes them a great basketball team. This team is layered. On the outside, you have the infamous physicality, the bully ball, the bad boy namesake.
Hey.
This fed into an entirely intentional and calculated strategy in which the Pistons sought to contest their opponents mentally. They wanted their opponents more preoccupied with where the next hit was coming from than with winning the basketball game.
Oh my God.
And you'll notice that through all the infamous scraps that the Pistons were ever involved in, they rarely threw the first punch. Agitate, don't retaliate. Instigate, don't initiate. None of it would have worked, nor been possible, had the Pistons not been ludicrously talented. And what brought it all?
That's what I was gonna say too. Like, they could have been this super dirty team or whatever, you know, this team that everybody hated, but they had to still been good. You can't just be a dirty ass team and not be talented. Like, you still would lose. You would just get into a bunch of foul trouble, and y'all team just wouldn't be that good. But they were super talented, and then they still, you know, had that, you know, fuck them up mentality. Like it's kind of crazy. It's kind of dope to kind of see it, but hey, it worked for them. It worked for them.
Altogether was the same thing that is at the heart of only the greatest of champions, only the most superlative teams. A deep, genuine, authentic bond and belief in each other. At the heart of the Pistons was the fact that they were a team. The physicality was what it was. I don't condone what they did. At times it had an essence of brutality. Basketball is a better sport without it. But it did make possible an improbable championship run at a time when they weren't supposed to be there. It was an approach built almost out of necessity. The 80s belonged to Bird and Magic, and as Michael Jordan began his ascent, it was clear that he would soon inherit the league.
That's tough.
No one allocated the time nor the space for a blue-collar team from Detroit without a single player averaging over 20 points to inject themselves into basketball history.
It was a real team.
Head coach Chuck Daly and Isiah realized that this team couldn't win by playing the way the Celtics played. They couldn't win playing the way the Lakers played. They didn't have a Michael Jordan. They had to find an edge. And so they exploited the fact that at that time in the NBA, a foul was just a foul. You could get ejected for overtly malicious acts. You could get a technical foul for arguing a call or for technical infractions. But a clothesline was penalized the same way that a reach-in was. To gain an advantage, the Pistons became willing to go where no other team had gone before. They bucked sportsmanship, skipped over gamesmanship, and went to work on their opponent's psyche. Of course, none of this would have mattered. None of the mind games or the shit-stirring would have done the Pistons a lick of good had they not been one of the deepest, most complete teams to ever compete in the NBA.
That's my point.
Bill Laimbeer, as we've established, was the league's premier antagonist. But his antics overshadow his tremendous defensive abilities, his exceptional rebounding instincts, his peerless durability, and the fact that he remains among the sweetest shooting centers ever. He averaged a 14 and 10 on...
I feel like Bill Laimbeer is one of them players that you would hate to play against, but you would love to have him on your team. Like, you would love for Bill Laimbeer to have your back. Like that. I feel like he was definitely one of them players back then. Let me know what y'all think about that.
On 50% shooting, despite the fact that he didn't have a post move to speak of in an era that was still predicated on play down low.
He could shoot.
His quick trigger on a shooting stroke made Laimbeer an essential pick and pop player, something that was nearly as alien in 1989 as a smartphone. Just as important, he never tried to be something that he wasn't. He knew he wasn't as good as Parrish or Kareem or McHale or Olajuwon. He couldn't dream of competing athletically with the great centers at the time. So he operated with intent, exploiting position, intelligence, tenacity, and physicality to command the court like a chessboard. He wore the black hat. He winked at the cameras when he knew that millions of fans were screaming at their TV sets. To the world, he provided a face for the bad boy image.
The most hated.
A lightning rod for their controversy.
The Pistons love to be hated.
He provided the spirit and the motor for everything they tried to do.
They literally thrived on it.
Speaking of controversial guys with high motors, Dennis Rodman.
Okay, Rodman.
Now keep in mind, this was not the Dennis Rodman with the hair and the tats and the high-profile relationships. This version of Rodman was young, hungry, and motivated chiefly by his desire to prove that he belonged on a championship NBA roster.
That was to get it out the mud, Rodman. But my question for y'all is, go ahead and write in the comments, besides Isiah, well, who was the second best player for the Pistons at this time? I know Isiah was number one, but who was number two? Was it Joe Dumars? They haven't really even said nothing about Joe Dumars yet, but I feel like I've heard his name a lot. Was he the second best player? Was Rodman the second best player? Laimbeer? Like, let me know who was that second guy in charge after Isiah. Because they had to have somebody else. They couldn't have just Isiah.
His rapid development necessitated a midseason trade that we'll talk about later, but Rodman spent the majority of the year coming off the bench. Despite limited minutes, Rodman averaged nearly a double-double and was a first-team all-defensive selection. The most important thing to know about Rodman is that he cared. He cared a lot. He fought for rebounds, dove for loose balls, took defensive assignments personally, and paid no mind to speed limits. He was full throttle, foot on the gas.
Oh my God!
He cried when he won Defensive Player of the Year in 1990. He pumped his fist after taking every charge. Though he wasn't a scorer, young Rodman was an athlete on the level of Shawn Kemp and Charles Barkley and belongs in the Chamberlain, Russell, Moses class of rebounder. At 6'7", he was the quintessential defender in the league. He could be stuck on anyone, from John Stockton to Scottie Pippen to Robert Parrish. No matchup was too big for him, and he consistently raised his level to that of his opponent throughout his career, whether it was Larry Bird or Shaquille O'Neal. As much as I've enjoyed and will continue to enjoy pushing the villain narrative with these Pistons, the fact is not everyone played rough. In fact, if you didn't know any better, would you believe me if I told you that the player for whom the NBA's annual sportsmanship trophy is named played for the '89 Pistons?
What?
It's true.
What the heck?
Since 1996, the player who most exemplifies the ideals of sportsmanship on the court, with ethical behavior, fair play, and integrity, is awarded the Joe Dumars Trophy.
Okay.
Joe Dumars might not have shared the same attitude as some of the rest of the Pistons, but he was as vital to the team as any player.
It's crazy. I'm surprised that would work. Like, no matter how talented he was, you would think that, like, if 95% of your team is playing a certain way, then, like, if you don't play that way, it's like it's not going to be a good fit for you. Like, but I feel like they probably just knew how talented, how good he was. It was like, you know what? We got this side. We got the, the fouling, pushing, and, the talking shit on this side. You just do what you do best, and we'll do what we do best over here. That's probably how they had the mindset. But it's kind of interesting because I didn't know, what Joe Dumars was about back then. So it's kind of cool to see that he was actually the opposite of this, bad boys turn that they had.
Combining with Isiah to form one of the scariest backcourts you can imagine. As a scorer, he was as well-rounded as anyone in the league. He wasn't a high flyer, but he could attack the basket, make his free throws, swing the ball around, and nail shots from all over the court. As a defender, I think I need only tell you that Michael Jordan cites Dumars as the toughest cover he ever faced in the NBA.
What?
Like Rodman, he was a first-team All-NBA defensive selection. Perhaps even more impressive considering he didn't resort to cheap shots. Dumars goes down as one of the more nightmarish two-way matchups ever, capable of torching defenders like Michael Cooper and putting the clamps on even the likes of Michael Jordan.
He used to clamp people up. They said that Jordan said he was his toughest defender ever, which is crazy because I feel like Jordan don't even give people that type of credit. So the fact that he gave Dumars that credit, like that's just dope. But my next question is, who is Joe Dumars' NBA comparison in today's game? Like, not even today, but just over the last, 10 years. Who is somebody you can be like, you know what, Joe Dumars, or he plays just like Joe Dumars used to play? Because from these little highlights, it's kind of hard to tell, but I want y'all to kind of tell me who I can kind of think about when, thinking about Joe Dumars.
Averaging 27 points a game in the finals 27? On a scorching 57% field goal percentage, Dumars' 1989 Finals MVP serves as a testament to the balance of the Pistons and to just how damn good he was. 30 Horn stood as a brick wall next to Laimbeer, similarly unafraid to get his hands dirty, set hard screens, grab rebounds, and make his presence known. Vinny, the Microwave Johnson, came off the bench to the tune of 14 points a game. As his namesake implies, the Microwave could get hot in a hurry and feasted on opposing reserve units.
Okay, Microwave. The jump shot ugly, but it's going
John Sally and James Edwards were players more out of the Joe Dumars mold, in that they weren't complete assholes. But both men played key roles in the team's championship effort.
Give me that.
Sally on the defensive end with his hellacious blocks. and Edwards on the offensive end with his unstoppable fadeaway. Leading the show with an incandescent smile that betrayed one of the most competitive minds in professional sports was Isiah Thomas. Spend any amount of time researching Isiah Thomas's basketball career, and you will hear a number of things over and over. First and foremost, that he remains the best pure point guard of all time. That isn't to say he's the best point guard of all time, but when it comes to what you would want out of a traditional point guard, speed, quickness, vision.
Is that true, y'all? Is he the best pure point guard of all time? I've never heard that. Let me know in the comments what y'all think about that.
Passing ability, inside scoring, defense, toughness, leadership, and a dependable jump shot. Isiah checks the boxes as well as any player who has ever played the position. He's on the short list of being one of the only point guards who can say that they were the best player on a championship-winning team, alongside Magic Johnson and Steph Curry. Isiah's stock has always been something of debate, and most of that is his own fault. Of course, the reputation of the team and their ability to make enemies out of everyone did him no favors in the moment. No one wanted to talk about how great Isiah was. They went to bed at night dreaming of Isiah getting rocked by Hulk Hogan. Because he managed to piss off so many stars, when they came together and formed the Dream Team in the summer of '92, Isiah was famously...
Before they start talking about how he got left off the Dream Team, let's do a posture check, y'all. Let's get that posture together. You know, we can't have no bad backs, man. Let's get it.
He hasn't done himself any favors in his post-playing career, embarrassing himself as an executive and coach, and prolonging his feud with Michael Jordan by asserting that LeBron James is the greatest player ever. He will always lose the popularity contest. Even people who never saw him play hate him, because the legends of the game hate him. None of this is to make you pity Isiah. When you choose to play like he did, and cultivate a reputation that way, you have to live with consequences like this. But those aren't the only reasons Isiah gets discounted. Isiah could take over games at a moment's notice. He did it all the time, which is why his blunder in '87 is even more shocking. Isiah lived for the big moments. But the thing that made him special was that he sought basketball of the highest order. He didn't want to have to take over games. He didn't care about making All-NBA teams or winning MVPs.
He just won.
He wanted to win.
He just wanted to win.
And he wanted to win with a team of guys who bought into a culture of accountability and camaraderie. He gave up shots and minutes so that Dumars and Vinnie Johnson could develop. He cultivated the culture like a garden, meticulously tending to its needs, encouraging and ensuring that it grew in all the right ways. In his eyes, a team was a lot harder to stop when you had to worry about 9 guys who could beat you than it was to stop 2 or 3. It's why the team's statistics don't jump out at you. They played a style of basketball between the lines. The balance of the Pistons roster, their flexibility and versatility would not have been possible had Isiah not been so willing to sacrifice his own success. Would not have the balance of the Pistons roster, their flexibility and versatility would not have been possible had Isiah not been so willing to sacrifice his own success for the greater good.
You're too little, Spudwell.
You might think that's hokey, and you might think that's bullshit, but it's true. When you talk about that era of basketball, there are 4 names that matter more than all the others. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, and Isiah Thomas. And oh, by the way,
that's good company right there, man. You see those 4 players, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Isiah Thomas. Who else would y'all say deserves to be on that list with them? But that 4 right there, hey, that's I don't know. I don't think no other player can get on that list.
Isiah has a winning playoff record against each of those other 3 players.
What?
If you want proof of the Pistons' culture, look no further than the Adrian Dantley trade. A 6'5" scoring machine that would one day end up in the Hall of Fame. Dantley arrived in Detroit in '87 and immediately made an impact. He gave the team an offensive dynamic that they'd been missing for years and helped propel the franchise to contender status. But by '89, Rodman's development was reaching a level that necessitated that he be on the court at the end of games instead of Dantley. Dantley, a 12-year NBA veteran, was unwilling to make room. So the team traded him for Mark Aguirre, The same Mark Aguirre, who was only available on the trade market because he had worn out his welcome in Dallas after conflict with coaches and teammates. You might argue about who was the better individual player between Dantley and Aguirre, but Aguirre came to the Pistons with something to prove.
Who was better, y'all?
It was made clear to him from day one by Laimbeer and Isiah that he was expected to buy in, to sacrifice for the good of the team, to do what Dantley couldn't. It worked. Aguirre went from averaging over 25 points a game over his last 5 full Dallas seasons to 15 a game as a Piston in '89.
Tough.
With his incendiary scoring abilities from the post and Rodman's defensive versatility on full display, the Pistons flourished.
That boy sacrificed
in the
for
50
greater
games
cause.
Between Aguirre's first game and the Pistons hoisting the championship trophy. The Pistons went 44-6. They swept Bird's Celtics in the first round, swept the Bucks in the second round.
Hold on, Bird gang, I got swept.
To set up a rematch with the Lakers in the finals and sauntered their way to a championship sweep against the defending champions.
And swept the Lakers?
Now I'll be the first to point out that the Celtics were past their prime in dealing with injuries. That Byron Scott missed the finals because of a hamstring injury before Game 1. That Magic was himself hampered by a hamstring injury in Game 2. But the '89 Pistons aren't the greatest team of all time because of who they beat to win their first championship. They're the greatest team of all time because of how they won that championship. The Pistons were designed to beat those teams at their peaks. Just because the Pistons got lucky at the same time they were peaking takes nothing away from how good they were, in my eyes. What do you want? Do you want a team that can defend in the post? Ask any big man from that period about what it was like to play against Laimbeer, Mahorn, and Sally. Do you want to shut down scoring from the guards?
Dumars.
Look no further than the greatest defensive backcourt ever in Isiah and Dumars.
Defensive backcourt
and if there's any player that's too big for the guards and too quick for the big men, Dennis Rodman is waiting in the wings as one of the most devastating individual defenders that the game has ever seen. The scoring could come from anywhere. The synergy of the team was such that they would feed those hot hands and usually heat up themselves to crush you in a million different ways from every direction. The scoring disparity between their leading scorer and their ninth man was 11 points a game. That's the same scoring disparity between Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen in 1996.
Did y'all hear that? They said that the number one scorer on Detroit Pistons team compared to the last score, I think they said the ninth score on the team was 11 points. So that's really nothing between the first score and the ninth score. They said that was the same exact discrepancy between Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Like, that's crazy. That kind of just shows the team that they had. They had a whole bunch of players that was all, scoring around the same amount of points, whereas the Bulls was something completely different, where they just had Jordan scoring all these points, and Scottie Pippen was just 11 points behind him. But Detroit was a real team. Like, it was not just one player scoring; it was a whole complete team, and that's how they won. Because teams win championships, man. There's no I in team.
They passed brilliantly. They played without ego. They could shoot. They could score inside. They could penetrate. Ironically, the bad boys played a very unselfish style of basketball that, were it not for the hostility of their attitude, would have had basketball purists singing their praises. This team had an identity as the villains. They embraced it. It brought them closer together. As the rest of the world got more hostile, the Pistons got closer. To a man, they all speak of each other not as co-workers, but as friends and brothers in arms. Yeah, they were the bad guys. But give me a great villain over a decent hero every day of the week. They're so much more interesting. The best hero...
Y'all taking a great villain or a decent hero? He said, give me the great villain any day. And I never ever thought about that, but yeah, give me the great villain.
Those are the ones who have to overcome their flaws, and the best villains are usually the ones with something humanizing about them. Look at Isiah's Game 6 in the '88 finals, the year before this championship team. He was rolling in the third quarter with his team up 3-2 against the Lakers. He was doing everything in his power to launch his team over the finish line. And with his franchise's first championship just 20 minutes away, the unthinkable happened. Fast break situation. Streaking down the court, he rolls his ankle.
That's when he fucked his ankle up.
He hits the floor and reaches out, instinctively grasping at the referee as he tries to stomach the pain. His ankle is sprained. Badly. On the bench, he clenches his teeth, summoning every bit of willpower he possesses. The Lakers take advantage and surge back to take the lead. And then, hobbled and limping, Isiah returns to the game.
Yeah, Isiah.
What follows is one of the gutsiest performances in the history of championship competition.
3.5 remaining in this period. Thomas with a looper scores. Thomas
and one. That's tough. He can't even walk. Look at him.
Thomas goes for three and hits it.
Threes, everything.
Isiah Thomas. Here's now the Pistons with Rodman. 2-on-1. Thomas goes up. And Isiah Thomas.
You gotta block that, Magic. He can't even jump.
In the game. 23 in this period. And the Pistons have regained the lead. 23 points.
That's so tough.
By Thomas. It is 81-79. The period is over. Can you imagine the
Hey, that was so tough.
One of the best we've ever seen in one quarter in NBA Finals history.
On one leg.
He finished the quarter with 25 points. The most ever in a single quarter of a finals game.
Wow.
The game would end on a pair of...
My man had 25 and a quarter on one leg in the finals. Like, come on, man. Like, I'm so happy I reacted to this video because, like I said, like everything I've been hearing from other videos is the negativity, man. But Isiah Thomas and these Pistons, they were different.
Of Kareem free throws following a controversial foul call against Laimbeer. Karma, some would say, for all the fouls he got away with in years prior. The Pistons would lose Game 7 as Isiah watched most of the second half from the sidelines. In light of that effort and that heartbreak, how can you watch the Pistons celebrate in '89 and not feel, if only for a minute, that they deserved it? They didn't cheat. They didn't cheat the rules, they didn't cheat the game, and they didn't cheat themselves. They earned every bit of what they achieved.
I fucks with it.
The 1989 Detroit Pistons were willing to do whatever it took, at whatever cost. Listen to the way Laimbeer talks about their approach. He sounds like Sun Tzu. Break the spirit of their leader, and you'll break the spirit of their unit. You couldn't come up with something that the Pistons didn't already have an answer for.
That was a crazy pass.
And there have been few teams since that can boast a deeper, more versatile roster.
I rock with Vinnie Johnson too.
Their
like,
masterful
bucket,
play.
it seemed like.
Their inspired defense, their remarkable selflessness, and their ability to win games without scoring a layup make the Bad Boys the greatest basketball team of all time. They were willing to do whatever it took. And what it took was to become the villains.
I rocks with it, man. I rocks with it. That just kind of gave me a whole different perspective on the Detroit Pistons Bad Boys team. Like, they weren't the most talented, they weren't the fastest, they weren't the most athletic, but they found something that worked. And that was, we're going to be the villain. We're going to be that team that teams hate to play against. Nobody want to battle with the bully. Like, everybody kind of is a little timid against the bully. And that was what they did, and they used it to their advantage. So, like, you gotta respect it, man. So I appreciate y'all for watching this video, man. Make sure y'all like this video if y'all like this video. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And I'm trying to get to 10K. 10K subscribers. I will be giving out a $50 gift card to Amazon to one of my loyal subscribers once I hit 10K. I'm gonna give it to a person that, you know, comments a lot, because that's the person that I feel like will really deserve it. But you have to be subscribed to the channel, and it'll happen once I get 10K subscribers. But I appreciate y'all like always, man.